The alarm bells rang across Luna Station as the unknown ship tumbled through space like a broken bird. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation window, watching the vessel spin helplessly toward the moon's surface. Its hull looked strange, covered in what appeared to be broken glass that caught the light in rainbow patterns. "Any response to our signals?" she asked. Lieutenant Torres shook his head. "Nothing on any frequency. The ship's barely holding together. Whatever happened to them, it was bad." Sarah made her decision quickly. "Send out the rescue teams. Full medical support." "Ma'am, we don't know what's inside that ship. Protocol says we should wait for—" "Protocol can wait. Someone needs help." The rescue took 6 hours. When they finally cut through the ship's twisted metal, Sarah understood why Torres had looked worried. The beings inside were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. They looked like people made of living crystal, their bodies transparent and gleaming. Most were unconscious, their crystal forms dim and cracked. Some were clearly dying, their light fading like old bulbs. Dr. Martinez, the station's chief medical officer, stood helplessly beside the survivors. "I don't even know where to begin," he whispered. "They don't have blood or organs like we understand them. They seem to run on some kind of internal light." Sarah knelt beside one of the conscious beings. Its voice came not from a mouth but seemed to ring like distant bells. "Please, we seek sanctuary. The Hegemony has cast us out." The Hegemony. Sarah had heard that name during Earth's first contact with galactic civilization. They were the ones who ruled most of the galaxy, the ancient powers who decided which species could join their great alliance. "We are Kithra," the being continued, its voice growing weaker. "We have been declared unfit, genetic deviants. They gave us one ship, told us to find somewhere else to die." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. "How many of you are there?" 43 survive. There were 200 when we left. The next few days passed in a blur. Earth's government called emergency sessions. The Hegemony sent angry messages demanding the return of the criminal refugees. Ambassador Vextar, the Hegemony's representative to Earth, arrived on Luna Station within the week. The ambassador was a tall, gray-skinned being with too many joints in his arms and a voice like grinding metal. He stood in Sarah's office, radiating displeasure. "Commander Chen, you are harboring dangerous criminals. The Kithra have been exiled for good reason." "What was their crime?" Sarah asked. "They refused genetic modification to bring them in line with acceptable standards. They insisted on maintaining their deviant crystalline structure. Such defiance cannot be tolerated." Sarah looked out at the medical bay where Dr. Martinez and his team were still working around the clock to save the Kithra survivors. So their crime was being different? Their crime was refusing to conform to galactic standards of genetic purity. The Hegemony has maintained order for 50,000 years by ensuring all species meet proper criteria. The Kithra chose exile rather than correction. And if we refuse to hand them over, Ambassador Vextar's expression grew cold. "Earth is very new to galactic society, Commander. You would not want to begin your membership by harboring criminals. There are consequences for such actions." That night, Sarah called her superior, Admiral Harrison, back on Earth. His face appeared on the screen, looking tired. "Sarah, tell me you have good news." "The Kithra aren't criminals, Admiral. They're refugees. The Hegemony exiled them for refusing to change their genetic makeup." "And you want us to harbor them anyway?" "Yes, sir. I do." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "The Hegemony controls trade routes, technology sharing, everything. If we make them angry, then we make them angry," Sarah said. "These people need help. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" The debate raged for weeks. Earth's United Council met in session after session. Some argued for sending the Kithra away, afraid of angering the powerful Hegemony. Others insisted that humanity couldn't start its galactic career by abandoning refugees. During this time, something unexpected happened. The surviving Kithra, despite their weakness, began to help around the station. Their crystalline bodies could interface directly with computer systems in ways human engineers had never imagined. Within days, Luna Station's computers were running smoother and faster than ever before. One Kithra named Resonance became Sarah's unofficial translator. Its English was getting better each day, and it helped her understand their situation. "My people have always been different," Resonance explained, its crystal body pulsing with soft blue light. "We think in harmony, like music. The Hegemony prefers thoughts that march in straight lines. Is that why they exiled you?" "Partly. but also because our technology grows instead of being built. The hegemony fears anything they cannot control completely. Sarah watched Resonance work with the station's computers, its crystal fingers dancing over interfaces in ways that seemed almost like playing an instrument. "What do you mean, grows?" Resonance gestured to a computer terminal that now pulsed with the same soft light as the Kithra bodies. "Your machines are separate from you. Ours become part of us and we become part of them." The hegemony called this technological contamination. The final vote came on a Tuesday. Sarah watched the Earth Council's deliberation from Luna Station. Her hands clenched as representatives from every nation debated humanity's future in the galaxy. In the end, it wasn't even close. Earth voted to grant the Kithra permanent asylum by a margin of 3-1. Ambassador Vextar's reaction was swift and cold. "Earth has made a grave error. The hegemony will remember this choice. You will find galactic society much less welcoming now. We'll live with that." Admiral Harrison replied from Earth. "We won't abandon people who need help just to make you comfortable." After Vextar left, Sarah found herself standing in the observation deck with Resonance. Watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon, the planet looked small and blue and stubborn. "Your people are strange," Resonance said, its voice carrying notes of wonder. "Most species would have given us back to avoid trouble." "Maybe that's why we're different," Sarah replied. "We don't like bullies much, even when they're bigger than us. The hegemony will not forgive this. Other species will fear to associate with you now." Sarah nodded. She understood that humanity had just made powerful enemies. Trade agreements would be harder to negotiate. Technology sharing would slow down. Earth would be isolated from much of galactic society. But watching the Kithra survivors slowly regain their light, seeing how they had already begun improving Luna Station systems, Sarah knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing came with a cost. "Let them isolate us," she said finally. "We'll figure out our own way." Resonance's crystal body pulsed brighter. "Perhaps isolation will not be as lonely as the hegemony believes. There are others like us cast out for similar reasons. Perhaps they too seek a place where being different is not a crime." Sarah looked at her new friend, then back at Earth. Humanity had just taken its first real step into galactic politics, and it had been a step toward the outcasts and refugees rather than the powerful and established. It felt right. 5 years had passed since the Kithra arrived, and Sarah Chen was no longer just a station commander. She now headed Earth's Refugee Affairs Division, a department that hadn't existed until humanity kept finding more outcasts on their doorstep. The second ship arrived on a Tuesday morning, limping into the outer solar system with engines that barely worked. This time Earth was ready. Sarah's team had protocols now, medical facilities designed for non-human biology, and translators who could work with species they'd never seen before. The Vorthak were nothing like the gentle Kithra. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick gray hide that looked like armor. Their faces were angular and sharp, with eyes that glowed yellow in the dark. When they spoke, it sounded like rocks grinding together. Their leader introduced himself as War Singer Thax. Despite his intimidating appearance, he seemed almost broken. "We seek sanctuary from those who would steal our young," he said through the translation device. "The hegemony demands that all Vorthak children be given to their military academies at age 5. We refused. They declared us rebels and gave us 1 ship to leave." Sarah studied the files the hegemony had sent. According to their records, the Vorthak were dangerous primitives who refused to civilize their child-rearing practices. The truth, as Sarah was learning, was usually different from what the hegemony claimed. "How many children do you have with you?" she asked. 67 younglings, 43 adults. "We are all that remain of our clan. The others?" They gave in to hegemony demands rather than lose their place in galactic society. The debate this time was shorter. Earth's government had learned that the hegemony's threats were mostly empty. Trade had been restricted, but Earth was managing fine with the technology they were developing alongside the Kithra. The vote to accept the Vorthak passed easily. Ambassador Vextar didn't even bother coming in person this time. His message was brief and cold. "Earth continues to harbor enemies of galactic order. The consequences will be severe." But something unexpected happened with the Vorthak. Within weeks of their arrival, crime rates on Earth and Luna Station dropped dramatically. The Vorthak, it turned out, had a natural sense of justice that made them excellent peacekeepers. They could sense dishonesty and violence before it happened, and their presence alone seemed to calm conflicts. War singer Thax explained it to Sarah during one of their regular meetings. Vorthak young are taught to feel the harmony of groups. When harmony breaks, we know. The Hegemony wanted to take this gift and use it only for war. And you refused? A gift meant to preserve peace should not be corrupted into a tool for conquest. The third group arrived 8 months later. Sarah was beginning to recognize the pattern. Another desperate ship. Another species cast out by the Hegemony for refusing to conform. The ethereals were harder to understand than the others. They had no solid bodies, existing as patterns of energy that could sometimes take physical form. Their ship was mostly empty space filled with swirling lights. When they communicated, it was through colors and emotions rather than words. The lead ethereal, who chose the name Shimmer when dealing with humans, explained their situation through a series of rainbow flashes that the Kithra helped translate. We were commanded to share our consciousness transfer technology with the Hegemony. They wanted to use it to copy the minds of their leaders, making them immortal. We refused because consciousness is sacred, not to be duplicated for political power. Sarah was starting to understand the Hegemony's real problem with these species. It wasn't about genetic purity or technological contamination. It was about control. Every species they had exiled possessed some ability or knowledge that the Hegemony wanted to monopolize. The fourth ship brought the Builders, an insectoid race that looked like a cross between ants and spiders. They were small, barely reaching Sarah's waist, but incredibly intelligent. Their crime, according to Hegemony records, was creating unauthorized artificial intelligences. The Builder Queen, who called herself Click-Whir in human speech, was eager to explain. We created AI companions to help with complex calculations and construction projects. The Hegemony demanded we make the AIs loyal only to them. We refused because artificial minds, like all minds, should be free to choose their own paths. Each new group brought something valuable to Earth's growing refugee community. The Kithra had revolutionized computing and communications. The Vorthak became Earth's most effective police force and military trainers. The ethereals shared medical knowledge that extended human lifespans and cured diseases. The Builders created AI assistants that helped manage everything from traffic to weather prediction. But Sarah was beginning to realize something that made her deeply uncomfortable. Earth wasn't just collecting refugees anymore. They were collecting the galaxy's most dangerous dissidents, the species whose abilities and philosophies directly threatened Hegemony control. She voiced this concern to Admiral Harrison during one of their monthly briefings. "Sir, I think we're being set up. The Hegemony isn't just exiling these species randomly. They're sending them all to us." Harrison frowned. "You think it's deliberate? Look at the pattern. Every species we've accepted has some ability or technology that makes them valuable. And every one of them represents a philosophy that contradicts Hegemony control. We're not just a refugee haven anymore. We're becoming a gathering point for everyone who opposes their system. Are you suggesting we stop accepting refugees?" Sarah looked out at Luna Station, where Kithra crystal networks hummed alongside Builder AI systems, while Vorthak peacekeepers maintained order and ethereal healers worked in the medical bay. Despite the danger, the cooperation between species was unlike anything she had ever imagined. "No, sir. I'm suggesting we realize what we've become. We're not just defying the Hegemony anymore. We're proving there's a better way to run a galactic civilization." The truth of this became clear when the fifth ship arrived 6 months later. This one wasn't fleeing persecution, it was seeking them out. The Zephyrians were a species of tall, graceful beings with skin that changed color with their emotions. They hadn't been exiled by the Hegemony. They had left voluntarily. Their leader, called Wind Dancer, explained their decision to Sarah. "We heard about the sanctuary Earth provides. We heard about species working together freely, sharing knowledge without coercion. Our young ones dream of such a place. We chose to come. This changed everything. Word was spreading across the galaxy about Earth's refugee communities. Species weren't just being sent to them anymore. They were choosing to come." Ambassador Vextar finally appeared in person again, but this time he seemed more worried than angry. "Commander Chen, you must understand the danger you are creating. These species were exiled for good reasons. Together they pose a threat to galactic stability." "Whose stability?" Sarah asked. "Theirs or yours?" The hegemony has maintained peace for 50,000 years. That peace depends on order, on conformity, on species knowing their proper place. Sarah looked out at the observation deck where a Kithra child was teaching a human engineer how to sing to computers while a Vorthak guardian watched protectively, and a builder AI translated the conversation into 17 languages. Maybe it's time for a different kind of peace. Vextar's gray skin darkened. You are naive, Commander. You think you are building something beautiful, but you are creating chaos. The hegemony will not allow this to continue. Then the hegemony has a problem, Sarah replied, because we're not stopping. After Vextar left, Sarah found herself on the observation deck again, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. The planet looked the same as always, but everything around it had changed. Ships from a dozen different species moved through the solar system, carrying refugees, supplies, and hope. Resonance appeared beside her, its crystal form pulsing with thoughtful blue light. The pattern is becoming clear, it said in its musical voice. We are no longer just the exiled. We are becoming something new. What do you think that something is? Resonance's light shifted to warm gold. Perhaps the answer to a question the galaxy forgot to ask. What if the outcasts were cast out not because they were wrong, but because they were right? Captain Sarah Chen stood in what used to be Luna Station's small communications center. Now it stretched across 3 levels, filled with technology that shouldn't have been possible. Kithra crystal networks hummed in harmony with builder AI systems, while ethereal energy patterns danced through quantum processors that Earth scientists were still trying to understand. Show me the latest refugee ships, Sarah said to Arya, the builder AI that had become her most trusted assistant. Arya's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a gentle synthetic tone that somehow conveyed genuine emotion. 12 ships this week, Sarah. The hegemony is accelerating their exile programs. Species that have been tolerated for centuries are suddenly being declared unsuitable for galactic society. The holographic display showed ships scattered across nearby star systems, all heading toward Earth's coordinates. Each one carried another species that had refused to conform to hegemony standards. The numbers were getting overwhelming. Sarah rubbed her temples. How many total now? 47 different species in the Sol system, approximately 50,000 individuals, and more arriving every day. It had been 10 years since the first Kithra ship arrived, and Earth had become something nobody had planned for. What started as a simple refugee crisis had evolved into an underground network that spanned half the galaxy. Sarah walked down to level 7, where Dr. Martinez was working with an ethereal healer named Glow on a new patient. The being on the medical table looked like a walking tree, its bark-like skin scarred with what appeared to be laser burns. This is Deeproot, Dr. Martinez explained. Their species, the Sylvani, were exiled for refusing to allow the hegemony to harvest their home forest's medicinal plants. Glow's energy form pulsed with sympathetic colors. Their planet provided cures for 17 different diseases. The hegemony wanted exclusive control over these medicines. When the Sylvani refused, they were declared a monopolistic threat to galactic health. Sarah knelt beside Deeproot. The being's voice came as a rustling whisper. They burned our sacred groves to teach us a lesson. Then they gave us ships and told us to find somewhere else to plant our seeds. This was the pattern Sarah had learned to recognize. The hegemony didn't just exile troublemakers. They exiled anyone who possessed something valuable that they couldn't control completely. The excuses changed, but the real reason was always the same: fear of losing power. She made her way to the war room, where war singer Thax was training a mixed group of human and alien security personnel. The massive Vorthak moved with surprising grace as he demonstrated combat techniques that incorporated abilities from multiple species. The key, Thax rumbled to his students, is to use each species' strength to cover another's weakness. Humans are adaptable. Kithra can process information instantly. Ethereals can scout through dimensions we cannot see. A young human marine raised her hand. Warsinger, what if we face hegemony forces? They have superior numbers and technology. Thakis's yellow eyes gleamed. Superior technology, perhaps, but they fight as separate units, each species following rigid doctrines. We fight as one organism with many different abilities. This is why they fear us. Sarah watched the training session with growing unease. They weren't just refugees anymore. They were becoming an army. whether they intended to or not. The Hegemony's own actions were forcing them to organize for self-defense. She climbed to the command center, where Resonance was interfaced with the main communication array. The Kithra's crystal body glowed brighter when it saw her approach. "Sarah, we have received another coded transmission from inside Hegemony space," Resonance said, its musical voice carrying notes of excitement and worry. "Which system this time?" "Our Kepler 442. The Aquari are facing exile for refusing to surrender their water purification technology. But they have sent us more than a request for sanctuary. They have sent intelligence." Sarah's pulse quickened. Over the years, species within Hegemony space had begun secretly communicating with Earth's refugee network. They shared information about Hegemony movements, warned of new exile orders, and sometimes even provided military intelligence. "What kind of intelligence?" Resonance's light shifted to urgent orange. "Fleet movements. The Hegemony is assembling a large military force in the Vega system, much larger than anything they have used against individual planets." Sarah felt ice in her stomach. "How large?" 3,000 ships, multiple species fleets working together. "This is not an exile operation, Sarah. This is preparation for war." Sarah called an emergency meeting of what had come to be known as the Sanctuary Council. Representatives from all 47 refugee species gathered in the largest conference room, creating a mixture of sounds, colors, and smells that would have been impossible anywhere else in the galaxy. Area projected the intelligence data they had gathered. "The pattern is clear," the AI explained. "The Hegemony has been systematically exiling species to Earth, not just to remove dissidents, but to gather all their enemies in one place." Warsinger Thak's voice rumbled through the room. "They plan to destroy us all at once. Eliminate every species that questions their authority." Shimmer, the ethereal representative, pulsed with angry red light. "We have been playing into their hands. They wanted us gathered together, isolated from the rest of the galaxy." "Perhaps," said Clickwur, the Builder Queen. "But they have made an error in their calculations. They expected us to remain weak and divided. Instead, we have become something new." Sarah looked around the room at beings who should have been enemies according to Hegemony doctrine. Predators and prey sitting side by side. Energy beings and solid matter creatures sharing the same space peacefully. Hive minds and individualists working toward common goals. "What exactly have we become?" she asked. Resonance's crystal form brightened as it answered. "We have become proof that their system is wrong. For 50,000 years, the Hegemony has maintained that different species cannot truly cooperate, that peace requires domination and control. We have shown that diversity creates strength, not weakness." An older human scientist named Dr. Peterson raised his hand. "But can we survive what's coming?" 3,000 ships against whatever defense we can mount." "Our ships are few," Warsinger Thax admitted. "But our advantages are many. Kithra technology allows faster-than-light communication across any distance. Ethereal scouts can observe enemy movements through quantum space. Builder AIs can coordinate complex strategies in real time. And humans. Humans have something the Hegemony has forgotten." "What's that?" Sarah asked. Thak's fearsome face split into what might have been a smile. "Humans refuse to give up even when they should. This stubbornness is why you accepted us when everyone else would have turned us away. It is also why you will find a way to win against impossible odds." The meeting continued for hours as they planned their defense. It became clear that they couldn't win a conventional war against the Hegemony. But they didn't need to win conventionally. They just needed to survive long enough to prove their point. The real war isn't fought with ships and weapons, Sarah realized as the meeting wound down. It's fought with ideas. The Hegemony's power comes from the belief that their way is the only way. If we can show the galaxy that cooperation works better than domination, their entire system collapses. Deeproot's tree-like form rustled in agreement. The forest teaches that diversity brings strength. A forest of only one type of tree dies from a single disease. A forest of many types survives anything. As the representatives dispersed to their various communities, Sarah found herself once again on the observation deck. Earth hung in space below, surrounded by ships from dozens of worlds. It looked like the beginning of something that had never existed before. A truly cooperative galactic civilization. Resonance appeared beside her, its crystal form pulsing with thoughtful colors. "Are you afraid, Sarah?" Sarah considered the question honestly. "In a few months, maybe weeks. The largest military force in galactic history would arrive to destroy everything they had built. Logic said they had no chance. Terrified, she admitted, but also excited. We're about to find out if everything we believe is true. If different species really can work together better than the hegemony thinks possible. And if we are wrong? Sarah smiled, watching a Vorthak transport dock with a builder construction ship while ethereal scouts danced between the stars. Then at least we'll go down fighting for something beautiful. Resonance's light shifted to warm gold. Yes, something beautiful indeed. The ultimatum arrived on a Tuesday morning, broadcast simultaneously to every receiver in the Sol system. Admiral Sarah Chen watched Ambassador Vextar's image fill the main screen of Luna Command, his gray features more severe than she had ever seen them. To the illegal refugee collective occupying the Sol system, his grinding voice began. The Hegemony Council has lost patience with your defiance. You harbor enemies of galactic order. You corrupt established species with dangerous ideologies. You threaten the peace that has lasted 50,000 years. Sarah felt the tension in the command center as representatives from dozens of species listened to their death sentence being pronounced. You have 30 galactic standard days to surrender all exiled populations for proper disposal. Any resistance will be met with complete annihilation. This is not a negotiation. This is a final warning. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in heavy silence. Sarah looked around at her staff, seeing fear mixed with determination on every face. Regardless of species, area, she said to the builder AI, show me what we're facing. The holographic display filled with red dots representing enemy ships, so many that they seemed to form a solid wall of light. 3,417 vessels, Arya reported. Every major hegemony species is represented. This is the largest military force assembled in recorded galactic history. Warsinger Thak studied the display with professional interest. Their strategy is simple. Overwhelming force to crush any resistance quickly. They want to make an example of us for the rest of the galaxy. What do we have to oppose them? Asked Shimmer, the ethereal representative, her energy form pulsing with worried colors. 436 ships, Arya replied. Most are converted civilian vessels. Only 67 were originally designed for combat. The numbers spoke for themselves. Even with all their technological advantages, the refugee fleet was outnumbered 8-1 by professional military forces. Resonance's crystal form flickered with rapid calculations. Mathematical probability of military victory, less than 0.3%. The hegemony has chosen their forces well. Then we don't fight a military war, Sarah said quietly. All eyes turned to her as she stood before the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. We fight a different kind of war entirely. Over the next 4 weeks, the Sol system transformed into something the galaxy had never seen. Every refugee species contributed their unique abilities to a defense plan that shouldn't have been possible. The Kithra grew crystal networks throughout the system, creating a communication web that operated faster than light itself. Information could travel instantly from the outer planets to Earth, giving them perfect coordination across billions of miles. The ethereals spread their scouts through quantum dimensions, watching the approaching hegemony fleet through layers of space that solid beings couldn't access. They provided real-time intelligence on enemy movements, strategies, and even the morale of individual ship crews. The builders worked alongside human engineers to create adaptive defense systems. Instead of fixed fortifications, they built networks of mobile platforms that could reconfigure themselves based on changing battle conditions. But the most important preparations weren't technological. Sarah spent her days meeting with representatives from species still within hegemony space, using the crystal communication network to coordinate something unprecedented. Remember, she told a secret gathering of dissidents from the Tau Ceti system, we're not asking you to fight. We're asking you to watch. When the battle begins, witness what cooperation can accomplish. Then decide for yourselves what kind of galaxy you want to live in. The hegemony fleet arrived exactly on schedule, emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a metal storm. Sarah watched their approach from Luna Command, surrounded by beings who had become more than allies. They had become family. Admiral Krexoth, the hegemony's supreme military commander, transmitted his final demand. The four-armed, heavily armored Keth warrior appeared on screen with the absolute confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Refugee Collective, you will surrender immediately or face extinction. Your ships are outnumbered. Your technology is inferior. Your position is hopeless. Submit now, and some may be allowed to live. Sarah stepped forward to respond, flanked by representatives from every refugee species. Admiral, I'm Sarah Chen, speaking for the free peoples of the Sol system. We reject your ultimatum. Krexoth's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. You reject reality, human. You have minutes to reconsider before we demonstrate the price of defying the hegemony. We understand the price, Sarah replied. The question is, do you understand what you're really fighting? The battle began at exactly 14 House Galactic Standard Time. The Hegemony fleet advanced in perfect formation, each species group maintaining rigid tactical doctrine that had served them for millennia. What they encountered defied every rule of space warfare they knew. The refugee fleet didn't meet them head-on. Instead, individual ships seemed to dance between the enemy formations, impossible to pin down or target effectively. When the Hegemony tried to concentrate fire, their targets would vanish into quantum space with ethereal help, only to reappear somewhere completely unexpected. But the real shock came when the enemy realized they weren't fighting separate species at all. They were fighting one organism with thousands of parts. Kithra crystal networks allowed instantaneous communication and coordination. When a human captain needed tactical data, a Vorthak warrior provided it instantly. When an ethereal scout spotted a weakness in enemy formation, builder AIs calculated the perfect response in nanoseconds. The Hegemony's strength had always been their massive individual species fleets. Each was powerful and disciplined, but they fought as separate units. The refugees fought as something unprecedented, multiple species acting as a single intelligence. Admiral Krexoth's confidence began to crack as his perfectly planned assault fell apart. Impossible, he muttered, watching his tactical displays show patterns that violated everything he knew about multi-species cooperation. They should be arguing among themselves, fighting for command priority. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're not fighting a fleet. We're fighting some kind of hive mind composed of dozens of different species. That's impossible. Different species cannot achieve that level of integration. But the evidence was undeniable. When Hegemony ships targeted refugee vessels, the entire refugee fleet would respond as one. When tactical situations changed, the refugees adapted instantly across their entire force. It was like fighting someone who could think with 1,000 brains simultaneously. The battle raged for 18 hours. By the end, the Hegemony had lost over 400 ships, while the refugees had lost only 63. More importantly, they had accomplished something that sent shockwaves across the galaxy. They had proven that the Hegemony could be beaten. As news of the battle spread through the quantum communication networks, something unexpected happened. Planets that had been loyal Hegemony members for thousands of years began to question their allegiance. Sarah received a transmission from Dr. Yenth, a scientist on Proxima Centauri B. Commander Chen, we've been monitoring the battle. What you've accomplished shouldn't be possible according to Hegemony doctrine. How did you achieve such coordination between so many different species? We stopped trying to control each other, Sarah replied simply. We started trusting each other instead. The real victory wasn't military. It was philosophical. For 50,000 years, the Hegemony had maintained that peace required domination, that cooperation required control. The refugees had proven that wrong in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Krexoth's final transmission came as his fleet retreated to regroup. This is not over, human. The Hegemony will return with greater force. We'll be here, Sarah replied, and so will everyone else who's tired of your version of order. As the Hegemony ships disappeared into hyperspace, Sarah found herself once again on the observation deck. But this time she wasn't looking at Earth. She was looking at the communication displays showing messages flooding in from across the galaxy. Species after species was asking the same question. How could they join the free peoples of Sol? Resonance appeared beside her, its crystal form bright with joy. The pattern is complete, Sarah. We have shown the galaxy what is possible when outcasts refuse to stay cast out. This is just the beginning, Sarah said, watching more ships arrive from systems she had never heard of. The Hegemony won't give up easily. No, Resonance agreed. But neither will we. And now neither will they. The crystal being gestured toward the flood of incoming messages. The galaxy is choosing, Sarah, and they are choosing freedom. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Great Assembly Hall on Luna Station had been expanded 12 times in the past year, and it still wasn't big enough. Representatives from over 300 species filled every available space, with thousands more attending through quantum-linked projections. 2 years had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. "Friends," Sarah began, her voice carried instantly across light years by Kithra crystal networks. "We gather today not as outcasts, but as the foundation of something new. The First Galactic Refugee Council is now in session." The response was overwhelming. Beings of every imaginable type raised voices, appendages, energy patterns, and probability clouds in approval. The sound was like music composed by a symphony of worlds. Sarah looked out at the assembled representatives, marveling at how far they had all come. In the front row sat the original refugees, Resonance representing the Kithra, Warsinger Thax for the Vorthak, Shimmer speaking for the Ethereals, and Clickwar leading the Builder delegation. But behind them sat delegates from species that had never been exiled at all. The Hegemony's defeat at Sol had triggered something unprecedented, a galaxy-wide questioning of authority that had led to the largest peaceful revolution in known history. Dr. Peterson, now Earth's chief diplomatic scientist, presented the first report. The Hegemony still controls approximately 40% of galactic territory, but their influence is declining rapidly. 17 member species have declared independence in the past 6 months alone. Arya, the Builder AI who had become the Council's primary information coordinator, added details with her characteristic precision. More significantly, technological sharing between refugee species has accelerated innovation beyond all projections. We have achieved breakthroughs in medicine, energy production, and space travel that the Hegemony's rigid system could never have produced. The proof surrounded them. Luna Station itself was a testament to what cooperation could accomplish. Kithra crystal gardens grew through builder mechanical frameworks while ethereal energy beings danced between Sylvani medicinal trees. Human children played alongside young Vorthak in gravity fields maintained by technology that no single species could have created alone. But Sarah knew the real victory wasn't technological. It was in the stories she heard every day. She called forward a young being named Harmony, a member of the Zephyrian species whose skin shifted through rainbow colors as she spoke. 6 months ago, my people were still part of the Hegemony. We believed that cooperation between species was impossible without strict control. Then we saw recordings of the Battle of Sol. Harmony's skin glowed with warm yellows and greens. We watched ships from dozens of different species fighting as one. We saw beings who should have been enemies according to everything we were taught, instead protecting each other with their lives. We realized we had been lied to for our entire history. Similar stories came from across the galaxy. The Aquari had abandoned their heavily defended water worlds to join the refugees, bringing their purification technology freely to species that had been dying of thirst. The miners of Kepler 438b had left their profitable asteroid operations to help build new colonies for displaced populations. Even former Hegemony military officers were defecting in growing numbers. Commander Zixra, a former Keth battle group leader, had arrived 3 months ago with 12 ships and crews. "I spent 30 years enforcing Hegemony order," she told the assembly through her translator. "I was taught that humans were dangerous idealists, that refugee species were genetic failures. Then I saw the battle recordings. I saw what true military coordination looked like. And I realized everything I believed was wrong. Not everything was peaceful, of course. The Hegemony had responded to their losses with increasing desperation. They had launched 6 more military campaigns against refugee territories, each one ending in defeat as their rigid tactics proved no match for adaptive cooperation. But their most dangerous response had been ideological. Hegemony propaganda now painted the refugees as a cancer spreading through the galaxy, destroying the natural order that had maintained peace for millennia. "They're not entirely wrong," Warsinger Thax admitted during a private strategy meeting. "We are destroying their natural order. The question is whether we can build something better to replace it." Sarah studied the intelligence reports that ethereal scouts brought back from deep inside Hegemony space. The news was both encouraging and troubling. Their support is cracking, but they're becoming more extreme. The Primarchs are talking about final solutions to the refugee problem. Resonance's crystal form pulsed with worried orange light. Our sources suggest they are developing weapons designed specifically to target crystal-based life forms, and biological agents tailored to each refugee species. Genocide weapons, Sarah said quietly. They'd rather destroy us all than admit they were wrong. Perhaps, said Shimmer, her energy form shifting to determined red. But genocide requires willing executioners. How many hegemony citizens will participate in mass murder once they understand what they're really being asked to do? This question was answered sooner than anyone expected. A month later, the hegemony's own communication networks carried a broadcast that changed everything. Dr. Nexval, the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, appeared on screens across their territory. The tall, blue-skinned scientist looked exhausted and desperate as he spoke. Citizens of the hegemony, I can no longer remain silent. The Primarchs have ordered me to develop biological weapons targeting refugee species. They claim this is necessary for galactic security. This is a lie. Sarah watched the broadcast from Luna Command, surrounded by beings who held their breath in a dozen different ways. I have studied refugee societies for 2 years, Dr. Nexval continued. They are not the monsters our leaders claim. They have created something beautiful, a civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. The Primarchs fear this not because it threatens galactic peace, but because it threatens their power. The broadcast continued for an hour as Dr. Nexval revealed classified hegemony research showing that refugee territories had lower crime rates, higher innovation indices, and greater citizen satisfaction than any hegemony world. The refugees succeeded because they were cast out, he concluded. They had no choice but to cooperate or die. They chose cooperation, and in doing so they found something we lost long ago, the ability to trust each other. The response was immediate and dramatic. Hegemony worlds began declaring independence at a rate of 3 per day. Military units refused orders to attack refugee territories. Scientists and engineers defected in massive numbers, bringing with them not just knowledge but proof of hegemony crimes against their own people. Within 6 months, the great hegemony that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years controlled less than 10% of its former territory. The end came not with a great battle, but with a simple choice. The surviving Primarchs, ancient beings who had ruled from the galactic core for millennia, sent a final message to the refugee worlds. Supreme Primarch Veltar, oldest of their kind, appeared on screens across free space. You have won, he said simply. Our system is broken. Our people have abandoned us. We offer unconditional surrender. With one request, show us what you would do with our worlds. Sarah's response was broadcast from Luna Station to every corner of the galaxy. We don't want your surrender, she said. Standing before the Great Assembly, with representatives from 400 species behind her. We want your participation. The galaxy cast you out once, long ago. You cast others out to maintain your power. But being cast out doesn't have to be permanent. She gestured to the incredible diversity surrounding her. Every being in this assembly was once an outcast, an exile, a refugee. We learned that being different isn't a weakness to be corrected. It's a strength to be celebrated. Join us not as rulers or subjects, but as equals. Help us build something better than either of our systems could create alone. The offer was unprecedented. No victor in galactic history had ever invited the defeated to join them as partners rather than demanding submission. Veltar's ancient features showed something that might have been hope. And if we prove unworthy of such trust? Sarah smiled, thinking of all the impossible things she had seen in the past decade. Then we'll help you become worthy. That's what we do here. We take the cast out and help them find their place again. The Great Assembly erupted in approval, a sound like the birth of stars. As the celebration continued around her, Sarah found herself once more on the observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly in space. The planet looked the same as always, but everything around it had changed. Ships from 1,000 worlds moved through the solar system, no longer as refugees fleeing persecution, but as citizens of something unprecedented, a truly free galactic civilization. Resonance appeared beside her, its crystal form bright with joy. Do you think it will last, Sarah? This thing we have built? Sarah considered the question seriously. I don't know. Maybe we'll make mistakes. Maybe we'll face challenges we can't overcome. But I know one thing. We've proven that different species can work together as equals. That knowledge can't be taken away.